G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's 2022. We've gotten off to a beautiful start. The weather has been absolutely fantastic. I'm up here at Nelson Bay with my grandchildren, just making the most of the holiday period. And believe it or not, it's the first moment that I've had today to get away and to do a vlog and go for a bit of a walk and talk. So today I'm going to go through a book summary, and it's a wonderful book. It's a book that I read many years ago by a very famous author. And there are some powerful lessons, I guess, that we can all glean from this text. The book is entitled Lateral Thinking, and the author is Edward de Bono. I was very fortunate years ago to have gone to a session and been part of an audience with Edward de Bono. And he was a very fascinating speaker, easy to listen to, easy to understand, very matter of fact. And this book here encapsulates most of that presentation that he gave, and it was a small audience. I remember going and seeing him. I forget the location, but it was an event sponsored by the Professional Speakers Association of New South Wales, and it was quite powerful indeed. And what we'll do is we'll go through the book summary and try and identify the 2 or 3 key points that came out of this book that we can reflect on and see if they can lead us to some better thinking, some lateral thinking where possible, and help us be in a better position to get through the challenges and the opportunities that 2022 will provide us. So in his book here, Lateral Thinking, Edward de Bono kicks off with a beautiful quote where he says that creativity is a great motivator because it makes people interested in what they are doing, and creativity also gives us hope that we may stumble across or come up with a creative idea that could lead to a better life and better further opportunities. So what is lateral thinking? I remember when I was working at IBM years ago, people would always joke about lateral thinking and say that some people mistake it with horizontal thinking. So horizontal thinking meaning, it's just sleeping on it. Whereas lateral thinking, I guess the best way to understand it is it's best described as the opposite of vertical thinking. So vertical thinking is the sort of thinking that we do when we've got facts, when we've got numbers, when we require logic and rationale to come up with a solution. So that's one sort of thinking. And the other sort of thinking that Edward de Bono came up with in terms of a term is where he talks about lateral thinking, where it's more about being an option thinker, forcing you to think outside the square, looking at things from a different perspective. And Edward de Bono basically steps us through a few techniques and just highlights some of the advantages that can be gained by just changing the way you think about things, changing the way you look at problems, and in some cases inverting the problem and looking at the solution from the reverse end, and other interesting techniques which can be quite useful, especially in a world where we've become stale and we basically don't think as much anymore. I remember back in the day where Edward de Bono actually said in his presentation, in his course, he said that when we're young, we are creative, we are smart, we are eager to learn, and then what happens is the best and brightest go on to tertiary institutions, they go on to universities and other places, and they learn how to unthink. They basically rote learn things just to pass exams, just to get through the course, to be acknowledged and appreciated by one's peers, by one's lecturers. But we lose the art of creative thinking. Because, as he says, and I will repeat this, from a very young age we are taught that certain problems have certain solutions. And I guess, certain solutions work, of course, in mathematical and scientific experiments, but they don't always work. They don't always work when we need to come up with novel solutions to complex problems, to problems that we haven't faced before, to things that we haven't considered before. And I guess the important thing to understand and to put this into perspective is that nobody has been to the future, and the world as we know it is rapidly changing. We've seen over the past couple of years with the COVID-19 pandemic how our lives have changed. But the good thing is that humans are flexible, humans are innovative, humans can come up with many solutions to many challenges. And we've had a tsunami of problems and tsunami of challenges. But lo and behold, 2020 presented us with a problem, with a virus known as COVID-19, which brought the world to a standstill, changed the way we interacted, we worked, we thought, we behaved in many ways. But with science, with money, with necessity, many scientists, many people throughout the world put their head down, put their resources to working, used innovation, used lateral thinking, used vertical thinking as well, to come up with a solution to a problem that we hadn't quite faced before, and a problem which caused a tremendous amount of upheaval. So we've seen lateral thinking, we've seen vertical thinking, we've seen teamwork working over the past couple of years, and we've got to the point where not only do we have one solution, but we've got multiple solutions. Who would have thought that a couple of years ago, with the problems that the world faced, that we would have had not just one, but over a dozen or so vaccines, solutions that can solve the problems that we have. Just so you know, I just came across a shell here which has a little hole in it, so I'll use that with my granddaughter tomorrow to make a pendant. So there you go. Just changing the topic for a moment. But as we were saying here, we've learnt how to deal with solutions, and the world came up with multiple solutions. Many people thought that it would take a decade to come up with a vaccine, to test it, to produce it, to distribute it, to implement it. But we know in hindsight, with 2020 hindsight, that it didn't take all that long at all to come up with not just one, but multiple viable solutions. And this is along the path of what Edward de Bono talks about in his book. And he says that sometimes, and a lot of the anti-vaxxers and a lot of the freedom wankers are probably the key problem. And the problem that they face is that they have a vertical thinking pattern, you know, suggesting and trying to create fear, uncertainty and doubt, and say that the vaccine hasn't been tested and hasn't done this and hasn't done that. But you know, necessity is the mother of innovation, of invention, and as we said before, we've proven it not once, but many times over the past year and a half, that we can come up with many solutions, many vaccines which are effective at dealing with the problem at hand. The author also calls to action and reminds us that it's important to understand and appreciate that children are the finest example of unfettered creativity, because children always look to learn something new. They'll always try and find a solution. If you tell them they can't do it, they will go over, they'll go under, they'll go through, they'll find a way. But as the author says, I just saw a turtle just surface over here, just on this side of this yellow buoy, just raised its head to get a breath. So I'll just keep on looking over here to see him come up again. But this whole area here, just so you're aware, is a marine sanctuary and is protected. And thank God it is, because it is an absolute paradise. So getting back to children, and I've had the glory and the fun of looking after my 4-year-old and 2-year-old granddaughters over the past few days, and they are so refreshing. They will test you, they will push you, they will bend and stretch you to get what they want, to get the outcome that they desire without giving up. And it's this unfettered creativity, this option thinking mode, where they're always continually looking to find how to do it without accepting or responding or living with the NO answer that Papunya Ya, Grandpa and Grandma sometimes offer. So lateral thinking, what is it? As I said, lateral thinking is a way of being creative in our thought processes, in the way we look for solutions, and it allows us, if we allow it, or if we take, or if we use it, if we leverage it, it allows us to consider other perspectives and other solutions. as we said before, lateral thinking is very, very different from vertical thinking. Vertical thinking, as we said, is mathematical, scientific, logical, rational, but not every problem that we have can be approached from a logical, mathematical perspective. There are many issues, many challenges, as we mentioned again before, that require a novel approach, that require us to look at it from a different set of eyes, from a fresh set of eyes, to be able to come up with a solution. So as we said, vertical thinking is great for analysing facts, whereas lateral thinking is good for complex issues that need innovative solutions, creative solutions, and something that hasn't been tried, used, or worked before. So the first formal point, so it's taken me a while to get to this, but the first formal point to come out of this book by Edward de Bono on lateral thinking is that we need to push ourselves. We need to learn lateral thinking techniques to open up solutions, to open up our minds and our ability to come up with answers, multiple solutions to problems, rather than settling for no solution or a limited solution, I guess is a key way of saying it. The bottom line is that we're all wired. We are all wired in a particular way. We're wired, most of us are wired for vertical thinking. I know that I am, where I look at facts, I look at data, I analyse, because we all have a native inclination, according to Edward de Bono. We have a native inclination in terms of how we see problems and how we deal with issues and how we come up with solutions. But as we said, because most of us are wired as vertical thinkers, we need to learn techniques in order to expand our way of seeing problems and dealing with problems, and to learn unconventional ways of solving issues. In some way, according to Edward de Bono, we actually need to force ourselves to look for alternatives in order to begin our chains of thought. Because we've all got patterns in our head. We all respond in certain ways. We all know, we've all got slithers of reality based on the experiences that we've lived, that we've faced, that we've learnt, that we've inherited from our parents, our siblings, our work, from a whole different genre of abilities and experiences. But as the author says, we need to force ourselves to look at alternatives, because once we look at alternatives and we come at a problem from a different angle, we reframe the problem, then we're able to initiate alternative chains of thought. And Edward de Bono says that you should also force yourself where you can to come up with not one or two solutions, but to come up with a half a dozen, 2 dozen. Just keep on pushing yourself, set yourself a quota for ideas. And by setting yourself a quota, because humans are teleological in nature, by saying that you need 10 solutions or 20 solutions, your brain will magically come up with all of those alternatives. And the more alternatives you have, the more angles you've got to look at a problem, the greater the chances of coming up with something that may be better for you. in terms of giving you an approach to solve the problem that besets you. So Edward de Bono talks about the importance of brainstorming to validate every idea, because brainstorming in a safe and open environment allows us to open up and not to retreat into our old thinking patterns. But it's important for the people in the brainstorming session to be open and to be free to express whatever thought they have, regardless how silly it is, because being open and available can be quite rewarding, according to Edward de Bono. And regarding techniques, Edward de Bono talks about a couple of methods. He uses the reversal method, or he talks about how we can use the reversal method or the inversion method, where you reframe a problem and look at it from a different angle. You don't look at it from a cause and effect angle, a sequential angle. What you do is you look at it from an outcome, and you look at the outcome, and then you work back from that outcome to try and understand what led you, or what led us to the problem in the first place, and what we could have tweaked or changed along the way to be able to have changed the direction and the outcome of the challenge that has eventuated. So as he says, rather than cause and effect, look at it from reverse. And the other thing he talks about is often incorporating analogies into the problem-solving technique, because what we're doing with analogies is that we're associating things that we don't know with things that we do know. And as we've discovered over time, the art of learning is attaching the unknown to the known, and the more that you know, the more that you're capable of knowing, and the more that you learn, the more you're capable of learning. So using familiarity, using familiar models, using analogies to help spur your imagination, help generate ideas and solutions, is one of the techniques that Edward de Bono harps on in his book. The other thing that he talks about, and this is the last point that I'll talk about from this book, is where he talks about two things, one called random exposure and the other is random generation techniques. And for this sort of thing, Edward de Bono says something that I think is really, really powerful, especially for young children and young families. The more exposed we are to experiences, to ideas, to problems, to challenges from a very young age, the more mental patterns we have available to us in order to be able to depend on and refer to when it comes to trying to identify a potential solution. So basically being open to new experiences, playing lots of sports, reading lots of books, being exposed to multiple OPE, other people's experiences from a very young age, can work wonders. And just on that topic, I remember when I was younger, many years ago, when I was applying for a job at Microsoft, I happened to read a book, the biography of Bill Gates, to prepare me for the multiple interviews. I think I did 6 interviews, 8 hours worth of interviews back then. I was hammered by the number of interviews and all the questions. I didn't get the job, but it was an eye-opening experience, and I did learn quite a bit about Microsoft, Bill Gates, and I did eventually spend or invest 23 years in the IT industry. But I remember what made a big impression on me, and it's along the same lines as what the author here is talking about in terms of random exposure. In the book on Bill Gates, it was mentioned that by the age of 10 years of age, which is very young, you know, look at kids around our families, and we're talking about a 10-year-old here. By the age of 10, Bill Gates had read cover to cover the whole encyclopedia, the whole World Book encyclopedia, not once but twice. And he's an avid reader, and he talks about the importance of reading and immersing yourself in OPE without risking anything. All you do is you sit down, you read, you imagine, and you can live multiple lifetimes, according to Bill Gates. And as we said, you can create many wonderful patterns that you can use to solve the many issues that will beset you over time. So that's the random exposure, which is basically gain as much experience as you can. And that's why, you know, in the old days, kids would do Girl Guides or Scouts, or do the Duke of Edinburgh challenges, and basically do lots and lots of things to expose themselves to many experiences. The other technique that Edward de Bono talks about is a thing called formal generation. And I love this technique because I remember hearing Edward de Bono talk about it, where he says that sometimes we need to stimulate our thought processes. And one technique that he talks about is we need to look outside our areas of expertise and look for other motivators. And he says that one of the best techniques that he knows of allowing people to solve problems in a creative way is to simply open up a dictionary. Regardless of what problem you have, open up a dictionary and randomly select the word. And I remember Edward de Bono using an experience where one of the scientists that he was mentoring was looking for a solution, and he says, just pick up a dictionary, open it up, and whichever word first pops up, use that to reverse engineer your solution. And I remember him saying that the scientist opened up the book and the word egg appeared, and then the scientist thought about the properties of an egg and how can these properties of an egg, or the shape of an egg, or everything about an egg influence or impact or help him solve his problem. And he went on to be able to use that as an analogy to work for him, to help him. And once again, it's just forcing you to think about things that you wouldn't normally think about. And it's done through, as the author calls here, a formal generation technique. So it's all about, you know, inviting, using our intuition, basically daring ourselves to be different, and pushing ourselves to live, to think, to work outside our comfort zones, to come up with innovative solutions and to back yourself. Give yourself a go. So we need to have productive mental capabilities, and to be purposeful in what we do, what we think, and how we behave. So there you go, another wonderful book summary. I've done well over 1,200 book summaries in English. I don't have a solid amount of followers. Maybe one or two people may come across this video, may listen to parts of the video, but it doesn't bother me. At the end of the day, it's something that I enjoy doing, something that I appreciate. Pop a bit of water here, so stand my ground. But yeah, it's something that I enjoy, and once again, it's exposing myself and others to OPE, other people's experiences that we can hopefully incorporate and use into solving some of the challenges that we may come across on a daily basis. So thank you very much for joining me on this longish episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's late afternoon, sun's gone down, but as I said, it's the only chance that I've got to get out and about, and I've got quite a few book summaries that I've summarised and I've prepared and I'm ready to go. So over the next couple of weeks, I've probably got about 20 or 30 that I'll be publishing, and I will continue to do so throughout the year as best I can. Anyway, take care everybody, yasas, and thank you for joining me, and I look forward to coming to you again from a different location with a different message of empowerment, where we go through, learn a few things, and where possible experience vicariously the beauties of this Australian land that we live in. And as you can see, Nelson Bay, Port Stephens, is absolutely spectacular, and I've just been covered in water. Take care and bye for now.